Thank you very much. I'll now recognize Mr. Babin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. And Dr. Jacobs, appreciate you being here today as well. Can you please talk a little bit about NOAA's relationship with NASA? Are there opportunities to be more involved in utilizing one another's capabilities in the area of weather forecasting and predictions? And what could these relationships look like down the road?
So NASA, we have a fantastic relationship with NASA. The two agencies are very collaborative and work on a lot of different fronts. I think most people would think of the NOAA-NASA collaboration when it comes to our satellite programs, whether it's the geo-hosted or the joint venture for polar orbiting. We've got some new things that we're working on that front, in addition to the commercial data buys. But on the modeling side, there's a lot of collaborative work that we can do with NASA on this. We're trying to go to a unified forecasting system. So not just NOAA, NASA, but all the different government agencies are working off the same model architecture, so that whenever an agency is doing development work, whether it's NOAA, NASA, DOD, DOE, it all gets bundled into the same framework. A lot of other interesting things we're working on with NASA are the data assimilation. We're looking at observation impacts through their forecast sensitivity to observation tool, which is extremely useful. There's also work we're doing with them, as well as DOE, on looking at GPUs instead of CPUs for different type of processor work as well. In addition to that, exploring cloud compute architecture.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, I represent Southeast Texas, where the chairman had mentioned that we got hit so hard, decimated by Hurricane Harvey almost 2 years ago. We're still in the midst of recovery from this storm. And there's been a couple of severe storms already this year, and it's incredibly important to accurately predict storms and their magnitudes. How accurate is the state of our severe weather forecasting, and do you think that we can do it better?
We absolutely can do it better. There's always room for improvement. Right now, the model that we would typically use for the high-resolution convective forecasting only runs out a day. We rapid cycle that model, so it refreshes every hour. There's a lot of work to be done on the physics in the model, as well as observing system capability. Once we eventually transition to a global model, a lot of our convective forecast will be driven by data that we collect over the Pacific Ocean, because the longer we predict out, the further west we have to do observations. So there's work to be done on the observing system side, as well as the modeling side. And in parallel to that, utilizing HPC better, because as we go to higher resolutions, it requires more and more compute resources.
Okay, and then how do you plan to incorporate emerging commercial capabilities, especially in space weather area, into NOAA's long-range planning?
So when it comes to commercial space-based observing systems, essentially what we would do is look at the impact of the data in the models, very much like we did with the GPSRO data, and determine how much value it adds to the forecasting skill. That's a little bit of work on our part too, because we have to make sure that the model is accepting of the data and can extract value out of it. Assuming that the commercial market to produce space-based weather observations is seeing value in selling the data to us, it's, in my mind, a more viable path to acquire the data. We can do it for less money, and as long as they meet the thresholds that we set for quality and reliability, I think it's a definite path forward.
Okay, and then lastly, what suggestions do you have for us members of Congress to help you maximize the best resources provided to NOAA?
Well, to maximize the best resources on the compute side, the cancellation liability fee is obviously a large concern because that's $50 million extra HPC that we could be using that we're just sticking the money in an account. Transitioning to cloud-based architecture is, I believe, the future because it solves a bottleneck of compute resources on the research side. And there will be some upfront work to transition that code over. And then continuing to support scientists both on the modeling side and the software engineering side, both internal and external to NOAA. That's where I think we'll see the biggest improvements in forecasting.
Okay, thank you very much, Doctor, and I yield back. My time's expired.
Thank you. I'll now recognize Dr. Baird for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Dr. Jacobs. We really appreciate you being here today.